Let's look at French pronunciation. Okay, I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. My background was I am not a native French speaker. I'm a native English speaker, and sometimes I don't even speak English that well, it seems like. However, I did learn French as an adult, and I lived in France for 17 years. I was a pastor. I did lots of public speaking, and people thought in general I was a pretty good public speaker, especially given my accent. So I do not want to claim that I've got a great French accent. I don't. I've got a decent American accent, maybe a solid 6 out of 10. People can understand what I'm saying. Occasionally it may take a little effort, but they don't get lost. They can understand what they say. They can listen through a sermon and get my jokes, things like that. But still, I only have to say one sentence and they'll say something like, "Oh, where are you from? England or America?" I've got an American accent. So if you want to learn how to speak, or if you want to hear French that's got the right accent, you should listen to YouTube videos with native French speakers. I'm going to teach you basically how to pronounce words and sentences so that you can get away reading French and people will know that you're reading French. So that's where I'm coming from and what I'm aiming for in this video. So let's start with syllabication. How do we break down words into syllables? In general, syllables generally start with a consonant. So if we take words like café and Marie and animal, now normally they don't have these slashes here, but I put them in to indicate where the syllables are. So it's café, Marie, animal. So generally, if there's one letter between two vowels, that consonant will be the beginning of the second syllable. Now, two or more consonants are generally divided among syllables if you've got vowels in between them, except for R's and L's, which will blend with the preceding. So if we have merci, the first syllable is mer, and the second syllable is si. Admis, ad and mi, écrivain. So cri has a CR, and that R and L are known as liquid consonants. They kind of behave differently than other consonants when you pronounce them. So the CR sticks together. And the same thing with tableau. The B and the L stick together. Okay, so that's syllables in French. Oh, now we're coming to something difficult. Stress and accent. Now in English, each word has its own accent, there's a place where you put the emphasis on the syllable, and if you get it mixed up, it's really hard. So in English, you want to place the emphasis on the right syllable. Wait, what happened there? That didn't sound right, because we want to say emphasis and syllable, not emphasis and syllable. Each word has its where the accent is supposed to go. But in French, that's not how it works. Stress doesn't belong to individual words, but on the last syllable of phrases or sentences. So that means the rhythm of French is very different. It's very regular with no accents till you get to the end of the phrase or the sentence. And this is really hard for English speakers to do because we want to put an accent on every word. So we would say something like La Ville de Paris, and we put it on the end of the phrase or the sentence. La Ville de Paris. So Paris is what we emphasize. La Vertu. So tu is what we emphasize. That's the city of Paris, virtue. La Vertu. We don't separate the words. We put the emphasis on the end of the phrase. Je vois l'artiste. East is the last syllable, so it's what gets the accent. So this is really hard for Americans. It's really hard for me, but we got to do what we can. Okay, let's talk about the consonants. Now, in general, the consonants, especially compared to the vowels, are not too different than the English consonants. Except a few things. One is that the final consonants are usually silent. So we have words like héros and furieux and objet. We've got two silent letters there. So the final consonants are usually silent if the word ends in a consonant. That's how the word ends, except with C, R, F, and L. Sometimes they're pronounced, sometimes they're not pronounced. But you can remember those because you have to be careful with those consonants. Now, consonants are always pronounced if they're followed by a vowel. So here we have petit, which is little, and it's masculine, so there's no E on it. Here we have the feminine version, and it's petite. The E is silent, but we pronounce the T now. The T is silent there, but the T is pronounced there because there's a vowel after it. Okay, let's talk about some specific letters, some specific consonants. C, followed by E, I, or Y, is pronounced like S and C. So it's kind of like a soft C, kind of like in English. So we have certain, cinéma, cylindre. All those C's make the S sound. Now sometimes you've got a C with a cedilla on it, and that's pronounced like an S also, even when it's not followed by E, I, or Y. So if you want to make a C pronounced like an S, and it's not followed by the right word, you put the cedilla, this little squiggle coming down from it. So we have garçon, which is a boy, or a façade, which is a facade. So that's C with a cedilla. CH is pronounced like SH in English. Shh. So the name Charles is pronounced that. We say chocolate as chocolat. CH is always SH. Now if you wanted to put a ch sound, you'd have to put a T in front of the CH. Like the country Chad is spelled T-C-H-A-D. Now all other uses of C are pronounced like K. So like in the word cafe and courage, we've got the hard C, the K sound. Let's look at the letters G and J. When G is followed by E, I, or Y, it's soft, kind of like the C. And it's pronounced like a ZH or an S, like the S in pleasure, je. So that's how the G is pronounced, the soft G. And J is always pronounced that way. So we can have the words général and juge. So we've got both the J and the G, but they make the same sound, juge. When G is followed by N, it's pronounced like the N-I in onion, kind of a strange sound. Magnifique, champagne. So that's kind of a special combination that we use in the word like onion. Nya. Okay, with the other letters, G is hard, pronounced like G in go. Like the word grand, jargon, guitar. Note that U is silent after G. How about Elles? No, they're usually pronounced like Elles. Now there's two L's in English. There's the L like Li and the L like law. Can you hear the difference? Li, law. It's always like Li with your tongue against your front upper teeth in French. But that's not too important. Well, yes it is, because in French if you say L like law, they can't tell the difference between that and an R sometimes. It's just kind of this weird sound. So it's always li, la, 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 la sound. Now, il in the middle of the word and il at the end of the word are pronounced like I followed by the semivowel Y. So it's not pronounced like an L like it usually is. It turns into a Y sound. Fille, famille. So it's a semivowel because it's almost like a consonant, but it's not really adding another sentence. Fille, famille, soleil. So it's just adding a little y sound at the end. But there's a few exceptions where il is pronounced like I followed by an L, like in the words ville and village, mille, so this is city and village, mille is like a mile, tranquille, oh no, mille is 1,000, is the normal meaning for 1,000, and tranquille is quiet and peaceful. Those are pronounced like the L. Other consonants. Well, the H is always silent. Hotel, it's like it starts with an O, so hotel. And even what's in the middle of the word, so like théâtre, you don't try to make a TH sound, which doesn't exist. It's like the H doesn't exist there. Théâtre. QU is pronounced like K. So words like qualité and question, you don't do a qua sound, you do a k sound. Qualité, question. T is usually pronounced like a T, but in the suffix sion, it's pronounced like an S. Nation, action, and S between vowels is pronounced Z, and the two S's between vowels is pronounced S. So we have like isolé and assume. So here it makes a Z sound because there's only one isolé between two vowels. Here it makes an S sound between assume. Now, there's also the consonant R that we don't really have anything for that in English. It makes a guttural sound. So try making that guttural sound for the R, and it'll generally be recognized as an R. Americans might make it a little too strong sometimes. You don't really twirl it like a Spanish R. It's a guttural sound that's often associated with German languages. Now let's talk about vowels. And this is where American accents really mess people up. Most are different than American vowels. The only one that's approximately the same is the letter A, which is, when you pronounce it, it's ah. It's not a, it's not a, it's ah. However, all the other vowels, apart from A, are different. Okay, another problem is that the final E in multisyllable words and a few others is generally silent, except in songs and poetry. So we can have words like Elles, so that final E is silent, facile, the final E is silent, and table, the final E is silent. It just basically serves to make the previous consonants pronounced. But if you were singing these words, you would, or reading poetry, you would say Elles, facile, table. You would add the short E on the end and add a syllable to it. So the pronunciation for French in spoken French, or when you read French out loud, is different than the French in songs and poetry. Now, in single-syllable words, the E is often not pronounced when spoken. So if you've just got a two-letter word with a E at the end, a lot of times you just get the consonant and everything gets swallowed up. So take for example, je ne sais pas. That's 4 words. I do not know. That's a standard French answer to a question, and you don't know the answer. I do not know. Je ne sais pas. But when you speak it, oftentimes it comes out as je sais pas. The je is the E and je is dropped. In fact, the entire ne is dropped, and the J and the S get ran together to je sais pas. That's pretty tricky and beyond the scope of what we're going to be doing in this PowerPoint here. So let's talk about the letter E. It has 3 different sounds, and you should learn to approximate each one and know when it's going to be. Now, French is basically a phonetic alphabet, or phonetic written language. You see the word, you generally know how to pronounce it, even if you've never seen the word before, except maybe that last consonant. But everything else it's generally not ambiguous. So let's take the first case is the letter E, pronounced when it has no accent mark and it's at the end of the syllable, when it's pronounced, it's like kind of like the schwa in English, that unaccented generic vowel, except in French, you purse your lips. That means you stick them out and make them real and small. Now in English, we don't have any vowels where you have to purse your lips. But in French, you do. So we have words like le, ne, and devant. And so that E is real soft and short, le, ne, devant. And you have to put your lips out to say it. The next form of the letter E is A. And so it sounds like the letter A, except you pull your lips back more. It's a pure sound. There's no diphthong going up and down in it. So we have words like été, which is summer, café, coffee. Now, in verbs, specifically infinitives that end in ER, that makes the A sound also. Parler, aider. And in short words, the ES is pronounced like A, like les, des, and mais. The S is silent, but it changes it to an A sound. EZ is at the end of words is pronounced A, parler, and chez. And A at the end of a word is pronounced, or the AI, j'ai and donner are pronounced that way. So that's the E with the accent aigu, the acute accent. Then you've got the E with the grave accent, or the circumflex accent, and it's pronounced like eh, kind of like egg, but again, you pull your mouth a little further back, and there's no diphthong, no change in tone as you go through the vowel. So we have mère, mother, père, father, fête, festival or party. We also get that sound when we have E followed by two consonants. So Elles. So the first E is pronounced eh, and the second one is silent because it's at the end of the word. And the same thing with the word set. So this is she, and this is this or that. Then also if you have or ai, ay, or ey, not at the final, it makes the eh sound. Fête, maître, crayon, and pen. So that's the eh sound. Okay, now let's move to vowel combinations with special sounds. And these you really need to memorize, because if you don't memorize them and you're even just saying some French phrase, you sound kind of like a not very intelligent person if you mess this up. So AU is always pronounced like O. So the word O, meaning at the word O, meaning water, and O, meaning to the, are all pronounced O, like a form of O that we'll see later. Now, EU is another one of those lips pursed sounds. So you have to stick your lips out and say P, D. And so that's a little and two. So this one's not too hard. This one's hard. Ooh is really hard. Lips pursed, kind of tongue in the back of your mouth. It's probably the most difficult sound for Americans to make. Foo, moo. Foo means crazy. Moo means soft or mushy. So that makes the... Now, with a bad American accent, you can just pronounce it like ooh. But the problem with that is that there's another vowel sound later that we'll see that's also pronounced ooh with a bad American accent. So at least pronounce it like ooh. Try doing it as ooh. OI always makes the wah sound. There's a W sound there. So moi, Miss Piggy's word for me. Voila, here it is. Has a W sound. VWA would be how it's pronounced. Voila. Now there's some vowels that are sort of similar to English, but not really. The I called the E and the Y called the E crack, the Greek I. The lips are very pulled back. So we say machine, machine. There's the O that's open when it's not the final sound. Pour and officiel kind of makes an O sound. And then we've got the O sound, like we saw before in the word mo or hotel, or anytime that we have the AU. And then we've got another sound that sounds a lot like oo in English, but it's not. It's u. It's like oo, but your tongue is up front, closer, u. And so we have words like fu and pu, which are different than fu and poo. They're the different, that'd be the OU sound, fu and poo, whereas the U is a U sound. Now there's also nasal vowels in French. When we have 4 different nasal sounds, and they all exist in English, but sometimes in English they have to be followed by an N or an M, so they are a little different. Now, basically, it's a vowel followed by an M or N within a syllable. You're going to make a nasal vowel sound and not pronounce an M or an N. Now, we're going to start off with the sound. And that can be AN or AM, EN or EM, make the sound. And that's like we have that sound in the English word font. If you listen to the word font, there's not really an N sound. We just get a nasal sound in there. We don't say font, we say font. And that's the sound. So that's the AN, AM, EN, and EN. Don, enfant, ample, ton. Now, and that's the O nasal sound. We have that in only, but we also put an N after that. So it's only the that makes that sound. And then we put an N in there. We don't really have the sound not followed by an N, but we can say it pretty easily. I meant to write B-O-N, not B-O-N-E. So pretend that E is not there. Bon, région, tombe. Those are nasal O's. That's O-N or O-M. Now there's also U-N and U-M, and this is less common, except for the word a, an, or So it's like pronounced like in grunt. We have that sound. So we have the words lundi, and parfum. Now it's interesting that in modern French, this sound is starting to disappear, and it's becoming more like an. You might have noticed that I said an for that, but actually, in traditional French, it's pronounced but especially in the Paris area, the is sound is pronounced more and more like this next sound, an. I-N or I-M, and that's like in the English word plant, an. So we get words like pain, which is bread, and main, which is hand. Now it also occurs in a bunch of combinations like an, yan, etc. So we have words like syntax, and rien. So it's when there's a combination, often we get this an sound. All right. So so even in the examples I gave you, it was AIN as examples. So that's vowel combinations plus N typically make the an sound. Now, one last thing in this pronunciation is la liaison. And that means the liaison or the tying together. Like at the beginning I said words, consonants at the end of the words are generally silent, but there's sometimes when you pronounce them. When there's no logical stop can occur between words, like within a subject, or right after the verb and the direct object, a silent final consonant is pronounced before a word starting with a vowel. But it has to be really close. If the subject can be separated from the verb, those aren't close. So we get expressions like les amis. So it's written like that, but I put this little connecting line to show that in this situation you would do the liaison and pronounce it les amis. You pronounce the S as a Z. Les bons étudiants. So here the S is not pronounced because this is not a consonant, but the S is pronounced here because it modifies students that starts with an E. Les bons étudiants. Now here we have the sentence, six hommes ont un chien. We have 6 men have a dog. So si, the word for 6, we do the liaison. Six hommes, it makes a Z sound. But the S after before the vowel, that's logically separated, so we don't do a liaison there. But have a dog, that's pretty close, so you do the liaison. But it's not mandatory. The more liaisons that you do correctly, the more sophisticated French you're speaking. So it's six hommes ont un chien. So that's, we make the T sound there. So both S and X make the Z sound in the liaison, but when there's a D, it makes the T sound. So if we were to start off a sentence, when one does such and such, quand is the word for when, and on is the word for one, but we would say canton. We would make that D pronounced like a T. So that's what the liaison is.